Hi, everybody. My name's Emily Best. I'm the founder and CEO of Seed&Spark. I am currently joining you from Lenape and Wappinger territory in Carmel, New York. And I am so excited about today's session with Kat Candler. And like all things film related, this is a great collaboration. So we have some incredible partners that I want to mention. The Alliance of Women Directors, a nonprofit inclusive collective of professional women identifying and gender nonconforming directors who've joined together for career advancement and to address the issue of inequality in the entertainment industry. That's allianceofwomendirectors.org. Glass Elevator, shout out, Jen, is the networking and skill sharing tool for professional women in the industry. It's free, it's membership based, over 5,000 vetted women and it's designed to increase the skills and strengthen the contacts and relationships between and among members. That's ourglasselevator.com. The incredible Austin Film Society, founded in 1985 by Richard Linklater, and they create life-changing opportunities for filmmakers. They catalyze Austin and Texas as a creative hub and bring the community together around great film. They are austinfilm.org. And The Real Women, which is a social media endeavor profiling, supporting, and celebrating women in TV, film, and media. And that's The Real, R-E-E-L, see what they did there? TheRealWomen.com. These creative sustainability sessions we launched during the pandemic, and they're always meant to be sort of part career inspiration and part practical knowledge. So we bring on incredible experienced creators to tell you the real shit about what it was to get where they are and give you a chance to ask your questions as well. So without further ado, because nobody wants to see me sit here talking about myself, let's bring up Kat Candler.
Hey!
How are you?
I'm really good. I mean, I'm doing well. I just got back from Canada a week ago and back with my cat and my husband and my PJs and my sweatpants. It's great.
I was going to say, like, I've been wearing slippers for 7 months. I just, as long as the weather will allow. I'm excited to see we've got people here from Tel Aviv, from Canada, somebody who's actually from Carmel, New York, which is weird because it's a real small town. Yeah, so we're getting a good global footprint today. I want to start at the beginning. I got to know you before you made your first feature, when you were in the process of putting Hellion together. Austin is representing, obviously, in the room.
Yes.
And I want to know where you started. Like, how did you figure out that filmmaking was going to be the way that you went?
Yeah, I mean, so with the real shit, like I'd actually made 2 features prior to Hellion. So I actually had a pretty long journey to get here, which is, I think a lot of us have a lot of films that nobody knows about or hasn't heard about. And they think, oh, this is your first thing. It's like, oh no, I've been doing this for a really long time and it's taken a while. So yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I got my degree in creative writing from Florida State. And I thought that originally I thought I wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be Bernadette Peters. I thought she was so cool.
I saw the acting credits and I was like, I'm going to go watch those movies.
Yeah. Well, it didn't translate so well after high school because, we all think we're really rad in high school. And then later on, we're like, oh, we're not as good as we thought we were. So I started in acting. I went to creative writing program at Florida State. And then I'd worked in a movie theater from age 15 all through college. And I loved movies so much. I just had no clue how to make them. And so when I was at Florida State, I was working in the movie theater. All the FSU film kids were working there. And I kind of got roped into both acting in their short films and then being a script supervisor. And I don't know what that means, but I'll show up and just tell me what I need to do and I'll figure it out, which seems to be sort of a theme in my life, in my career. It's I don't know how that happens, but I'll figure it out. So I got the bug when I was in college to make films, and I've grown up basically around the I-10 area. So New York was way too cold for me. LA was a little scary at the time. So I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, which I'm so grateful that Austin Film Society is a part of this, because they've been a huge part of my career over the years. But Austin was this really special place with interesting indie filmmakers and this really beautiful, kind, like community that just, it felt like home. So I moved there. I started making some short films. I made a feature film back in 1999 on the first version of the Canon XL1, back when mini DV was a thing. It played the Oscar.
That was the big revolution.
Oh, it was huge.
Cheap. It's so
everybody could make a film all of a sudden. And we did. We all made films. And that one played at the Austin Film Festival. It premiered there. It had, a tiny little like regional splash. And of course I thought, oh, now I'm going to have major motion picture deals and money thrown at me. And of course that didn't happen. So I continued to make short films. And then I made a second feature that premiered at South by Southwest. And again, I was like, oh, this is my huge break. I'm going to, 3 picture deals at Paramount and Sony. And that didn't happen. In fact, we did a self-distributed tour of that film, which was fantastic because I learned so much about the distribution aspect of indie filmmaking and actually how hard it is to get a film out into the world. Mm-hmm. So all along the way, I'm picking up, I'm being educated through the process and learning so much. I mean, if you look at the first feature film I made, like the camera never moves. The framing is like, some of the performances aren't as like nurtured. But you learn a lot over the process. And then sort of the point where things kind of shifted was when I started teaching at the University of Texas in the film program there. And I was watching all of these really wide-eyed...
Wait, can I ask an indelicate question?
Absolutely.
How old were you at this point?
This was 2007, so I'm 46 as of 2 days ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And so that was, I don't know, 2007. I didn't do well in math.
27, you would have been 32?
30s, yeah. Early 30s. But I had all of these students that were just making stuff all the freaking time. Like every weekend they grabbed all their cameras and all their friends and started making things. And I was like, why am I not doing the same thing? And so I had free equipment from UT. I had friends and students, and I just started making a bunch of shorts. And the first one, which you guys actually distributed long ago, was Love Bug, which was this 8-minute, really sweet, silly, wildly different from anything I've ever done.
So charming.
It's super, super cute. Yeah. I made it for $800. It's pretty much all set in the apartment that I lived in at the time. And it did huge. It like played all of these kids festivals. Sesame Street called me. It made the most money I think of any short that I've ever had. And I kept making shorts, gathering friends. And then the short Hellion that I made ended up playing at Sundance. And this is, of course, after submitting to Sundance, God knows how many times, and getting rejected over and over and over again. It was that moment of like, it's my turn. And that changed a lot of my career, not everything. I mean, it's, you never stop tirelessly fighting and working, even, now I'm like constantly working and trying to like get things off the ground. Yeah. So I guess that took you through a little bit of a trajectory.
I love this so much because like you lived a lot of life in this process, right? Which I do think is very important in the life of a creator and an artist. Like you actually also have to live a lot of life. I just want to mention, by the way, there are folks streaming from Australia, from Brazil, from Indonesia, obviously from Austin, Texas, California, like all over. It's just, I love this about, like, if we're to see any tiny advantage, any tiny silver lining in the global pandemic landscape. It's that we're connecting in ways that we just never would have before. And so I love that this kind of story can get out. Um, it's very interesting just to think about how the process of just deciding to generate seemed to be like a real catalyst, right? It wasn't about, I'm going to go make the most perfect thing I can possibly make and then wait to be picked. It was more like you kind of did that thing. You went and made a couple of features and waited to be picked and it didn't happen. And then you made this choice to just generate stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when stuff started to happen.
Yeah. And I'll say also the thing is, when you stop with the intention of like, I have to make it, and your intention is not like, I've got to get that deal or I've got to, make this money. That's when things really organically started to find that sort of success. Like, I remember the Hellion short, it'd been a beat since I'd made something, and I had this little short, and I was called up my friend Kelly Williams, who was working at the Austin Film Festival at the time, and I said, hey, do you want to go make something this summer? I have something I think is pretty cheap. And we literally just gathered our friends. I think we raised like $5,000 on Indiegogo or Kickstarter or something. And we just went and shot this little thing with our friends, not with the intention of literally not the intention of getting into Sundance, but just to go get on the playground again. And that's the thing that really kind of started the whole trajectory. So for me, I find when I'm working with my friends, working on something I really love, just for the sake of working on it and being present with the art, is when things really manifest into forward movement with my career.
How did you fund those early features, prior to going to Sundance and getting the stamp of approval?
Yeah, so the first feature we made, I think we spent $5,000 to get it in the can. And I don't come from money at all. I'm super, super scrappy. And at that time, we didn't have Indiegogo, we didn't have we didn't have any of these things. So I literally had garage sales. I'd ask people to donate whatever bags of clothes or furniture. I would run around town with my friends in their pickups and grab all these things and then raise $1,000 at a garage sale. We would have benefit concerts with friends playing at Club de Ville in Austin and raise a couple $100 that way. So, and then also I guess it was pre Indiegogo and Kickstarter. I sent a letter to all of my friends and family saying, hey, I have X amount of money. That's my portion to raise for the feature. Can you can you give me $100? And so I raised a good part of the budget for that first feature by just sending letters with stamps to my friends and family.
Platform crowdfunding. That you are the reason why a bunch of us then built crowdfunding platforms, because people were doing that and we were like, that's not efficient.
No. But I did. I raised the money that way, and it was beautiful, and it's so affirming to have, whether it's a post stamped letter that people are sending you $100 check for, or if it's some friend that you haven't talked to in years that with one of my short films, a friend of mine who we worked at a radio station in college together, he ran the heavy metal show. And my short Black Metal, he was super excited and gave me a good size of the portion of the budget that I was raising. And it was like, it's so beautiful how that kind of thing, it's so hard to ask for help, but the beauty is when people really respond to what you're making or just believe in you and want to champion you. So yeah.
Glorious. Yeah, I think it's important to remind people that, because people are sort of like, how did you fund that first feature? And then somebody says something like, we made it for $5,000. And you're like, oh, I guess I could figure out ways to put that together. But also I love these stories of, I ran around town creating garage sales. I remember we had a crowdfunding project on Seed&Spark where they had raised the lion's share of their budget collecting recycling for the better part of 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
They're just amazing stories of resourcefulness that I think is really important, that kind of matches the spirit of, I'm just going to generate.
Yeah.
I'm just going to generate, you can't stop me. Okay, so now I want to turn to this moment where you have this short that gets accepted. It goes to Sundance. And now you're going to make Hellion into a feature with flashy actors and stuff. What was that sort of I don't want to call it a level up, because I think making stuff with your friends can be just as challenging, but that sort of like industry level up, what was that experience like, and what were the new challenges that you faced?
Yeah. So the short, definitely opened some doors with Sundance folks who have been just like such a blessing in my life. With the San Francisco Film Society, which again, like a huge like blessing to our film and to all of us as artists, so many artists. And, I spent probably about a year and a half rewriting the feature script. I knew when the short got into Sundance that I needed to have a first draft by the time we got to Park City. So I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And then, I probably wrote, I don't know, at least like 10 or 15 drafts of that script over the course of a year and a half. Kelly Williams, who produced it, he ended up going to the lab for the creative producing lab. So it went through like tons of workshopping there. I think he came back with 30 pages of notes. Where for me, I'm like, ugh. And then you're like, exactly. Then you like settle into it and you're like, okay, I can get on board with some of these. And then, I think originally we were trying to raise like $1 million or something. And this was 2013. So I don't know how much the climate has changed. I would imagine probably not that much. But I think we raised like 50 grand from two 50 grand portions from private equity. And we were still missing the large chunk of what we needed. We ended up getting Aaron Paul on board, but that was actually through a connection at Sundance. The beautiful thing about what we do is we lift each other up. We help each other out through our peers. So through Sundance, I've met like so many people who have forwarded my career in many ways. So I met James Ponsoldt at Sundance in 2013. And he made the connection to Aaron for me. And then Aaron got the script and really responded to it. He signed up. And then through the script going through UTA, then Juliette Lewis signed up for it. But we still didn't have our money, and we still couldn't get our money. We did the whole trip to LA. We were living in Austin. Trip to LA, made all the rounds with all the people.
Water bottle circuit.
Totally. We had Aaron, we had Juliette, Jeff Nichols was EPing. It was just like this package like that had been Sundance certified and still couldn't get our money. And eventually I remember I love telling the story because I was sitting with David Zellner, who's a dear friend, and it's his birthday today too. I'll shout that out. And if you don't know his films, him and his brother, Nathan Zellner, make amazing, wonderful films. Again, Austin, Texas. But we went to breakfast one morning and I was just lamenting the fact that I think we were a week or 2 weeks out from moving to Southeast Texas where we were shooting the film, and we didn't have our money. And it was, we all get into that situation where it's like, if you don't get the money, the plug is getting pulled. Maybe you'll shoot it next year, but probably not because the momentum is dying. And he just gave me this wonderful pep talk of like, you gotta do it. It's like hell or high water, like gotta get your money. And I was all fired up, and I went home and I called everybody. I emailed every single person I knew. And we had our money promised like, I think 48 hours later, and then left to go to Southeast Texas to make that film for, I think originally $1 million, and we ended up making it for $500,000.
That's a big budget cut.
Huge. And the beautiful thing is that Kelly grew up in that area. So much of the resources that we needed were in kind, whether it was like literally his parents housing people to his parents' friends feeding us. Yeah. Everything was, donated or borrowed or, it was great.
Whatever you have to do. The like edge I want to smooth out of this story that I think some people are kind of asking about is like, so Sundance stamp of approval, but like usually the conventional wisdom is like talent doesn't get attached until there's money.
It's always such a weird, I feel like there's no answer to that. There's no right answer to that. I think every project has a different life and how it finds financing or finds its way to the screen. I think if you have really if you have really great material and a really great script, and people are going to want to be a part of it. And it does, I mean, it certainly gets tricky with talent because there's schedules and there's, other projects that are fighting for, the schedule whenever you're trying to shoot. So there's so many elements at play when it comes to casting. And, sometimes it's not about the material. Sometimes literally it's about scheduling conflicts, or, an actor wants to actually be home with their family, understandably, for the next however many months. Right. But no, I've never found there's no right way to putting a package together by any means. But I will say that having those elements, I had 2 short films that had played at Sundance at that point. So that was a bit of a stamp of approval. We had gone through the producer's lab. We had EPs of note.
A mensch.
Again, your community, our Texas community is such a family, and we're all supporting each other and again, just lifting each other up and connecting each other. And so regardless of whether it's Austin, Texas, or, somewhere in Missouri or Australia or wherever, it's so much of it is finding your community. And those are the friends, the family that you have that you're gonna rise with, which is the beauty.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, just to think about going to a city and then really deeply investing in that community. And you're talking about Jeff Nichols, who got ahead first and then brought a bunch of others up with him. And I think this is really, it's important to think about what is available locally. I think so much time is spent thinking about what's in LA or what's in New York, it's lovely to think about the ways in which that community specifically has produced so many incredible films.
Yeah, I mean, say that again?
Yeah, together, and it was Mark Duplass has a story about David Zellner helping him out. I feel like a lot of roads lead back to David, actually. Happy birthday, David.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I remember back in Jay and Mark were making a movie that a bunch of us went and helped out on, whether, it's rough cut screenings or volunteering to help with background players. It was, and no one was famous at that time. No one was making Hollywood movies. We were just genuinely in it for the love of each other and for filmmaking, because it was in our veins. And then it was having the backbone of the Austin Film Society and South by Southwest and the Austin Film Festival that really provided financial support, festival support, and connecting each other as well.
I want to not spend all of our time on the side of the business that everybody gets anxious about, but we all think about too much. I also want to know, when you went from directing these features with your friends to now all of a sudden you have this talent on set and you're in East Texas. What was your experience as a director? What was that like? And what were you scared of, and how did you overcome it?
I think, so the second feature that I made, I learned a huge lesson on, and that was, I had assembled this Texas group of actors that we had a lot of time to rehearse. It was a very naturalistic style. And then I brought in another actor who I adore and love, and I thought, oh, he's like big time and knows what he's doing. And all of my attention was being paid to this other group of actors because I felt more comfortable with them. And so I wasn't directing him in ways that I needed to. And he actually pulled me aside one day and was like, we need to have a talk, and kind of had a, come to Jesus of like, I need you to like help me.
Wow.
And since that time, I'm like, oh, my job is to protect their art, to protect their performance, protect their risks that they're taking, and to encourage a safe space to play. So by the time I got to Hellion, and we also have a no asshole policy, like with everybody, whether it's in front of or behind the screen. So we're always vetting everybody. I don't, it doesn't matter who it is. So I knew that, Aaron and Juliet are just such fantastic human beings in general and killer actors. And it was really comfortable with those guys. And then we had a cast of young Texas kids who, what was beautiful is that they were so raw and had never done it before. And then pairing them with these two really, killer actors that have been doing it forever. And I saw how beautiful it was that each of them brought each other's game up. It was really nice to kind of witness, oh, this 14-year-old kid who's never been on a film set before is like helping you get to places, and you're doing the same for him.
I just got chills. I think about that scene in the house when they're all listening to metal music and just whiling out.
Oh yeah.
I actually think about that scene a lot because I remember having both my like human brain and like filmmaker brain activated at the same time, of like this raw human emotion and being really responsive to it. And also just like, wow, these kids showed up.
Yeah. I mean, so much of the casting process, so much of the performance is in the casting process. And I feel like if you really take the time to find the right fit for the characters and the story, your job on set is so much easier.
Yeah.
Wildly easier.
I just say all hiring is like this.
Oh God, yeah.
All hiring, if you vet heavily, if you stick to your no asshole policy, if you know what you're looking for and communicate it clearly, and you assess people for roles very carefully, and you always call their references.
Yes.
Ideally, actually call references they don't, that you're connected to and that they haven't given you. I think that that will save your life just generally. It makes your whole job so much easier.
And the thing is, we all talk. I mean, in terms of directors, we all talk, whether it's an actor or an AD or, a PA. Like, we know who we love to work with and who's exciting to work with and a good human. And then we know people that may not be the best experiences and may not be the best fits. But that's something I feel like people may not be understanding, that we all have little circles that we are talking and exchanging experiences and information. And so it's a sisterhood. I will say that.
So at what point did you get into TV, and how did that happen? Because I know this is a transition that so many people are interested in. And just, prior to this, like, do you when you're sort of like, I am Kat Candler X, are you like, I'm a writer director, I'm a producer, how do you think of yourself in the creative space, and where do you want to spend most of your time?
I think at this point, I feel like I'm a creator, whether it's on the page or on the screen. I don't, even though I have fallen into the producing aspect of it, it's not my favorite place to be. With the exception of, I like putting pieces together, and I like putting projects together. I do enjoy that. But definitely writer director first and foremost. And if I had, I don't ever want to have to choose, but I don't ever want to choose.
No, don't worry.
No, you were asking, oh, television.
Yeah, the move to television.
Yeah, so after Hellion premiered at Sundance, again, it was like, all the doors are going to open up and the 3-picture deals, round 3. I'm like, and that didn't happen. I definitely, I got representation and saw a lot of projects coming through the agency, which, I think the myth is that once you have representation, you're going to get all these amazing scripts and all this amazing stuff is going to happen. When in reality, a lot of the scripts that you're getting aren't very good, aren't really what you want to do at the end of the day. And you're still having to work really, really hard, whether it's generating your own material or working with your friends and your film peers and your community to find the right people that you want to end up with at the end of the day. And that's a hard lesson coming off of, Sundance or whatever, big festival that you're coming off of. You think that all these doors are going to open, and it might be a little bit different now. That was 2014. But it's still, there's so much work. The work never ends. It never ends, no matter where you are in your career. But the television thing, once I got, again, like I was making no money. I was teaching one class at the University of Texas. I was making probably about $13,000 a year, like literally paycheck to paycheck. I was teaching like workshops in Austin just to like cobble together, a car payment. And so I was like, I need to get into television because it's the means of getting a paycheck. It's also getting to work with bigger resources and it's an in and out. You only spend sometimes 2 or 3 months on a project and you can go work on your other stuff in the meantime. But I couldn't get into television. I mean, again, at that time, it was a lot of when you have your first episode, then come back to us. And no one would give you that first episode. And I met with so many networks and studios and production companies and showrunners, and no one would give us a chance until Ava reached out. We had met in 2011 at the director's orientation. I was there with the Hellion short. She was there with Middle of Nowhere. And we met and then had just, stayed in touch over the last couple of years through film festivals and such. And so she reached out. She was at South by giving a keynote, and we went and had like fries and a burger or something afterwards. And she was like, hey, I'm making this TV show called Queen Sugar. Is it something you'd be interested in directing? And you're just like, oh my God, yes, please. Everyone, like hundreds and hundreds of doors are shutting or not even opening, not even cracking open. And here she is like, I don't know, would you be interested? And it's like, please, God, yes. And so she basically brought a lot of us, indie filmmakers to the table that no one would give a chance. And I think what speaks volumes is that show is amazing. It's so beautifully shot. It's so, just artist filmmaker driven. And when the first season came out, it's like, it's undeniable that if you give artists a chance, they are going to make something shine. So yeah, so that was my entrance, which is not, I think it's an anomaly for a lot of other filmmakers who are trying to get that first TV episode, which everybody has a different story from the countless programs that were going on for so long. I think now people are starting to, be more receptive to really rad artists and rad filmmakers coming and like making something special with your show. But at the time, no one was doing that. So that was, and then I just kind of kept making, getting into TV from there and directing. Yeah.
I have 2 questions that are coming from the crowd, one directly and one I'm sort of assembling. Okay. And the first is, you just described like a lot of no's.
They never stop. They never stop.
And so Becky Dennis asked, how do you keep yourself both inspired and like maintain a sense of self-belief?
It's hard. I mean, it's definitely hard at times. I think a friend of mine from years ago I mean, like literally probably 20 years ago, I remember him saying, you keep blinders on and you just really focus on your work and you don't compare yourself to anybody else. You don't try and be like, well, it's really like just focusing on the work and kind of going back to just making stuff, just continuing to like get on the playground, whether it's a short film, whether it's a screenplay, whether it's developing something from a book or play. But no, oh my God, like we all get really down on ourselves. There's no magic, like everything's shiny and rainbows all the time. Oh my God, no. I mean, yeah.
So the other question is about that community, because like there aren't a lot of Kelly Williams in the world.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
He is very special.
He's a pretty special producer. It's not, for that to be the like person you get to link up with at the very beginning, like that's a good deal. And so I would be curious, like, as you've had this experience, how do you evaluate producer partnerships? Are you just going to work with the same people forever? Because I wouldn't blame you. But also like just talking a little bit about like finding that great producer partnership, or maybe just telling people, because the comments are now coming in so fast. I'm losing. Oh, Roxy Sparkles was asking specifically the question about finding that right producer partner. So like, what is the magic for you there? What do you need from a producer, and how do you kind of assess that?
Yeah, I mean, I fell in with a bunch of friends in Texas and people that I'd known Kelly for years as working at the Austin Film Festival. And it was, knowing that he wanted to get into producing, and this being this thing that maybe we could, I knew him as a friend and I trusted him and I knew his sensibility and the things that he really shined to. So it made sense. And then, it was a short film. So if for whatever reason we didn't get along or didn't work well together, it was that thing that we did that summer and it was fine. Nowadays, I mean, to be totally honest, like I just want to work with my friends still, even now. And I genuinely like reach out to my friends that I've met through the film festival indie world, and I'm partnering with those guys who I just know that they come, from really great storytelling, the same sort of sensibility that I have. I know they're good humans. I mean, that's like first and foremost, like I got to work with good humans. I can't work with assholes. I can't even work with kind of assholes. But I mean, I'm just looking for someone who shares really great storytelling sensibilities, who's really going to protect what's on the page, is going to protect me and protect like how I achieve what I want to do. But is also just a great partner in kicking my butt sometimes too, like pushing me to questioning some of my choices, or challenging some of the choices, or even, just making sure that script from draft 1 is going to be killer by draft 10, and keep pushing that, knowing that it's just going to get better and better and better. So it's a balance of, and just someone you want to be with for like the next 2 or 3 years.
Right.
It's a marriage.
Really important is how long especially for a feature, how long a director and a producer are going to hang out. I've been producing a feature documentary, which is my first foray into feature documentary. And we're following the Equal Rights Amendment, which is it's 100-year-old story, and it continues to evolve. And, I started working on this project in 2017 or 2018. And like, we thought it was going to be buttoned up by the end of 2019. Nay, not so. And otherwise, and like, it's like, okay, and we're finally in post, but it's just like projects morph and take shape, and you just have to, you definitely have to be with people you literally like to be around.
Yeah.
There's a piece of this that is not transactional.
No. And it, like you said, it could be years. Like we made Hellion in 2014, but we still have to do taxes on Hellion, or like it never ends. That partnership never ends. But it's who do you want to be in the most harsh circumstances with, who is going to have your back 150%, and keep your spirits alive, and, you know, keep the art beautiful on screen. And also that you want to like grab a milkshake with at 4 a.m. when you guys just wrapped and like just shoot the shit with.
Yeah. Yeah. And run down the day and trust their feedback. And I mean, that.
All of that.
Important. I want to ask, I think, what is a challenging question, and it may be an unfair question to ask you, right? Because in some senses, this is like a counterfactual argument, but the festival circuit as we know it has kind of vanished last year. And given the state of the pandemic, it's not going to reopen anytime soon.
Right.
And so much of what you're talking about is building that community through these festival circuits, right?
Right.
What are you seeing right now, if anything, that people are doing kind of as a replacement for that essential networking? How are people connecting? How are they finding work? How are you finding new writers? Like, where are you going for these new artists for the shows that you're working on now?
Yeah, I mean, as far as collaborators, like it might be a script I read that I loved that I didn't get, or never got made, and I'm just reaching out to those writers, or I'm watching, you know, short films or indie features. I mean, that's the thing about the festival circuit is you sit in a dark theater, you watch something, you get really inspired. There's a Q&A, so you do have the opportunity to go up to that person after the Q&A and say, hey, I really loved your work. I would love, you know, to possibly work with you someday. So I don't know if it's like reaching, I don't know what medium to reach out, but I do think like these, I don't know, that's a hard one. It is, yeah. I wish I had an answer for that, but I'm not. And I'm also, in the indie space, I'm not as tapped in to that community as it is right now. I'm trying to, like, I personally am reaching out to some younger filmmakers and trying to be a part, just helping where I can, in that respect, specifically in Texas and specifically with, you know, the Austin Film Society and filmmakers that I've just seen their work over the years and really admire what they're doing and just want to be a part of helping however I can. So on that side of things, I'm searching filmmakers that I get excited about and trying to insert myself. I'm like, I don't know if you really want me, but I'm going to try and be a part of whatever you're doing because I think you're really rad.
That's a powerful argument for just making work and getting it out there come hell or high water, as you said earlier. This idea that it has to be out somewhere. And I do know, I mean, festivals are online virtually, the films are getting watched, the Q&As are being attended. People are getting their work out there. I think the proactivity level, like you can't just sort of like walk into, you know, like buy a festival pass and walk into a room in the same way anymore. But I do think there's also a lot fewer barriers to getting in the room because you don't have to go to LA and pay in an Airbnb and go be on the couch and water bottle circuit. Actually, it's in some senses, some of the barriers have been brought down because people are moving a little more slowly. And, you know, there's this level of accessibility, which I think is pretty powerful. There are like so many amazing questions.
Well, I was just going to say one thing too, is that we are the festivals ourselves, especially nowadays with Zoom. Like the one thing that the pandemic did do is I started having watch parties. Like Annie Silverstein's Bull was coming out, and, you know, so we did a watch party for it and just invited everybody. Channing's movie Miss Juneteenth came out, so I did a huge watch party for it. So we are also programmers, you know, for our own community and for our friends and family, and giving things that we get excited about an audience to people who may not necessarily find that film. So I champion everybody to go program stuff on a Zoom, you know, watch party, and then have a bunch of people your friends in your community watch it and give that filmmaker, a wider audience and a wider landscape to play in as well.
That's right. I will also say something that I've noticed is the comment section of things like this become a ton of resource sharing. Right?
Yeah.
We're answering each other's questions. They are being in community with one another. And that would never have been true if you and I were sitting next to each other on stage and a bunch of people in the audience. They wouldn't all be talking to each other right now, asking and answering one another's questions. But there's something actually beautiful about the ability to do these things synchronously, because you might forget your question or not get an opportunity to ask it and not know that that expertise is already in the room.
Yeah.
I do think there are some, again, it's hard to say there's any silver lining in a global pandemic that is killing hundreds of thousands of people. It's that we as artists always have to find a way to persevere, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do. How is it different, the process of kind of setting up a feature versus, writing and directing for television? Because like, this is something that I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out, is like how to bridge the gap in one direction or the other.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I find myself, as the grass is always greener right now. It's like, oh, I wish I could make an indie film right now. And then I think about the process. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really hard. Okay. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to create a TV show. And it's like, that's really hard too. So it's all hard. There's no easy path in one way in either direction. But it's always having a story, a script that you are just head over heels for, you are so in love with, you are going to stick with it for decades to come, because it may not find a home or find a screen for like a decade or two. There's several projects that I've had for years and years and years that have there's lots of almosts, like it almost became this or it almost became that. Yep. But they are projects that I will make at some point because I love them with my heart and my soul. So, television is very much like, packaging a feature where you have to have like your pitch deck or your sizzle reel, or you have these materials that you put together to sell the vision, the look, the tone. And then you have, whether you've written your pilot script or you've written your series Bible, but there's so much. I think the mystery is that there's still so much work to be done for something that may not make it passes across the board. And that's just the reality. That's the reality of television, is you could spend literally like a year working on something, go out with it and get all passes, and be like, all right, what's next? And so for me, what I think I've learned is that I have to have a lot of projects that I love, which is why I partner with a lot of friends, just people that I am excited to make something with, and that I just enjoy. I have two friends from Texas that I work with, and we got excited about a particular story. And so every Sunday we would get on Zoom and we would have our little mini writer's room. And it was not about what we were expecting to happen, but just the idea that every week we would have our little writer's room and we would be creative. And, I would be on set and I would have a Sunday off, and I knew that I could go enjoy that creative productivity with my friends. Again, and it kind of goes back to the Hellion short, with no intention of like making a gigantic splashy show. It's just, I enjoyed the process. And I think that's really, really important, is to savor. I mean, it's always savoring the process, whether you're on set, whether you're writing something, whether you're, researching something. But it's still hard. It's still hard work. Again, the indie feature might take 2 years to get made. The TV show might take a decade to get made.
Right. How many projects, if I may ask, do you kind of have in your hopper at any given time? You're there. She's like,
I'm literally looking over at a file cabinet kind of thing, and there's probably about 10. That are kind of active. but one thing that I learned from a life coach that Sundance gifted me years ago, I keep a goal sheet. I have a piece of paper that I update every Friday. And at the top of it, I have like the goals that I want to accomplish that year. And they're always staring at me every Friday when I update it. And then I have a list of the projects that I have on my plate, where they're at, what I need to accomplish with them next week, what I achieved this week. And literally I do this every Friday. I send it to my agents and my manager, but it just keeps me on top of what I have going and what I want to have going. And then also the goals, like seeing those goals every week. And it seems so simple and so straightforward, but it kind of works.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. At how many goals?
I started when I worked with my life coach, she was like, you have to have 3 goals for your year. And I'm back at that time, this was 2014 after Hellion, and one of them was TV directing. I think one of them was probably like paying the bills, figure out how to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And I think the other one was getting an indie feature off the ground. And so I stared at these goals, and she helped me figure out how to put money on the table. The TV thing was really challenging, but it was, again, at the forefront of my brain all the time. Now I've extended, I think I have like 5 or 6 goals on my list. One of them this year was shooting a pilot, which I just wrapped last week. So I can check that one off. And then, the goals just sort of expand as I learn more about the world that I kind of inch into every day.
You just shot a pilot during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what it was like. What was the process of even getting to the place where like this got greenlit to actually go, and what was different?
Yeah, I mean, we started this pilot. It's called The Republic of Sarah, and we started it last spring when we got shut down. I remember we were shooting a camera test on March 13th when we officially got shut down, and everybody flew back the next day. And we were like 3 days away from shooting. All the pieces were in place. So it was a heartbreaker. It was a real heartbreaker. But I will say, in the time that the time between us getting back up and running, we ended up, at first we were just a pilot order, and then we got a series order during the pandemic. So that was really nice. Yeah. So then it wasn't just coming back and doing this one thing. It was like, oh, now we can breathe the entire story and the entire life of this show. Coming back, the seasons were different. So all of a sudden we went from sheets and sheets of snow to golden, red, beautiful fall colors. So that was actually really nice. But it's different. I had a lot of fears going into it. Definitely talked to a ton of friends who were shooting right now and getting advice. But at the end of the day, I would say after like a day or two, there wasn't a whole, outside of like the testing and masks and all of that, it's still the same thing. We were still moving at a good pace. It's just, the little things of like, you can only have so much time between these 2 characters because they're in this bubble or they're not in this bubble. And it's like, all of a sudden, you only have 5 takes instead of, for that whole scene. Wow. So it can be challenging, but again, I think everybody was just so happy to be back at work. Yeah. And because there were so many protections and rules, it felt safe. Like I felt safe in my experience of it.
That's a relief to hear. I'm curious. What do you think? Do you have any sense of like, or what are people sort of talking about going into the winter and spring?
I don't know. It feels like production is back in full force. Starting things early on, there are certainly kinks to work out. On every show, you're going to be figuring the process out and figuring out all the little details. But now that people have been through it and know like what's working and what's not working, hopefully things will be a little bit smoother moving forward. But again, like we're just at the mercy of the pandemic and what's going to happen. And it's just such a unknown. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's people's safety and it's people being protected. And I think that's one of the things working in that environment is people look out for each other, like the crew members, the actors, like each other's safety and health is at, you know, the top of everybody's minds. And so we're all just trying to make sure that everybody is protected and safe. And yeah.
So I think because we've been talking for almost an hour about creativity and career, I now feel like it's okay to shift the conversation for a moment towards like equity and inclusion.
Sure.
What I don't ever want to do is get a really brilliant creator on here and then just talk about the stuff that we all get asked about that's actually not our problem. But I would like to hear you reflect on your career sort of through the lens of what were the additional challenges, what were some of the advantages you have had, and what are you seeing that has changed or that still needs improving?
Yeah, wow, that's a big one. Yeah, I mean, certainly growing up in the independent film scene, I was definitely one of the very few women in our community. And when I started teaching at UT, I found that I was teaching an upper level class in the film program. So it was juniors and seniors who had gone through all the, you know, the big, huge 100 student classes. And I was only getting like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 young women out of a class of 20 or 24. And it was breaking my heart. So I just started looking at the numbers and working with other faculty members to see like what was happening here. And I was seeing a lot of 50-50 percentages within these 100 early freshman, sophomore classes. And then the numbers were just dropping. And so, you know, trying to start supporting these young women in particular, you know, just started an organization to support the female filmmakers in the college environment. I think what was really upsetting and hard was now looking back at what, you know, the numbers of my African American students in my classes. And when I look back now, I was like, oh shit. You know, I'll start crying because it's heartbreaking to go back and witness and see like I had so few, like staggeringly few. And I wish I had been more aware at that time. I think now I can't speak for UT or like college classes, but I think within my community of filmmakers and directors, we are trying to do what we can in terms of supporting and like reaching back and like finding ways to like improve and improve upon what we were at the mercy of through our careers, and really being as active as we can and trying to make a difference.
Has it changed how you build your teams and write your scripts?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, going on to the Queen Sugar set, which was my first, I mean, Queen Sugar was like such a special experience and not like any other, in that my first TV set was beautiful because it was like it was such a representation behind the camera. And I wasn't privy to the other TV sets that weren't. So that's what I learned coming into television, was like, oh, this is like real life in front of and behind the camera. And I just thought, you know, I knew that wasn't normal. And so when I did go to sets that were not that, I was like, oh shit. But yes, it is. trying to be very active and, like Ava, it's putting in work. It is a lot of work, but at the end of the day, we're just missing out on so many amazing artists in the process. And the ripple effect of that is heartbreaking for so many reasons.
I think what you point to is really important, especially for white people, which is intentionality, right? Like, it won't happen on its own.
Yeah.
Right? Like your projects won't magically diversify, your teams won't magically diversify. And I do think a lot of us, that what you're saying is true, that like you want to be working with your friends. If your group of friends is not diverse,
right,
that's actually the challenge that you see then echoed all the way through
For sure.
the ripple that echoes through the industry is like groups of people, and then they come up together and then they look around and they're like, oh shit, we all look alike.
Yeah.
And so it does have to be really intentional from jump, right?
Yeah.
From the very beginning of when you start working. I want to get back to creativity, because like there are social problems we cannot solve in 90 minutes. Even though you and I have dedicated our careers very much to knocking down doors in every direction that we can. But I really want to respect, like, you're here as a creator. The word that it says right below your picture is directing.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to, there's some really interesting questions about directing for TV, specifically pilots. Like what is the magic of a pilot that you feel like really gets people paying attention, especially if it's like that proof of concept, or that, you better show us what you're made of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so the difference between directing like a regular episode of television and a pilot is really time and ownership. So, you're coming into episodic on other people's shows, and there's already a language that's built, a cinematic language that's been established, and there's a family of crew members and cast members that you're stepping into, and hopefully you get along with everybody and love everybody. So you're a guest to those particular episodes. With a pilot, it's very much like a feature film. I mean, you're still answering to the studios and the networks, depending on who they are and what their sort of mandates are as well. But there is so much more ownership over, you're creating that cinematic language, you're creating the style and the tone of the show partnered with your showrunner. And there's just more time. You come into an episode of television where you're shooting an hour over the course of 7 or 8 days, and a pilot, you could be shooting, anywhere from, 12 to like 20 days.
Really?
Well, I'm assuming you can have 20 days. We weren't 20 days. We were, I think, 14 or 15 days, but there's more time to be spent on, like, because you want to suck that audience in from the get-go. And if you don't in that first episode, then no one's going to tune in for the next one. So you're going to spend your time and you're going to spend your money to make something really special. Yep. But at the end of the day, it's good storytelling. It's good storytelling layered with cinematic storytelling or sound design storytelling. But you're just in performances. It's all about just making every little piece sing.
Yep.
And for me, on everything that I do, it's really, I've put together a whole lookbook for the show, lots and lots of visual examples. My office, the director's office, was just like plastered in images of what it should feel like and look like, and even over the course of arcs of these characters as well, and arcs of the season of this place. So you're just building the world from the ground up, from the page that you're given, from the showrunner and the writers teams.
I love that. I wish you could see, I mean, if you want to click over it, it's a lot to get through, but the comments are so amazing right now. People are supporting each other. And Joe B, it was his question about directing the pilot and kind of making it kick off. And he said that being an Asian actor and Asian director, some of his friends have hinted at being a liability unless we're doing something Asian centered. and I say, fuck that noise.
No.
Those are not your friends. Get
No.
better friends.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
Right.
And there's like, I think there's an actually like a ginormous, there's a huge groundswell behind Asian representation right now, right? Of not just Asian stories, but just Asian representation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just like tuning over to I was in another chat and now I'm like, oh, there's tons of stuff happening over here.
Yeah, it's really absolutely incredible. It's been a delight to watch. And I do think it's actually a testament to like the kind of people who collect to come see you also and your vibe in the world, which is like, this is, it's very generous what's happening over here. Paula says she's found her tribe.
I know. I love
that. World building is such a, like, this is where my mind starts to bend when people talk about world building. When you are kicking off the creative process around building a world, like what is your in personally? Like, how do you set yourself up for success to build a world?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely start, once I get a script or I'm working on something, I start with just devouring images. I have like my, whether it's Film Grab or Shot Deck or all of the photographers, like a whole list of photographers that I love and go to and just start picking and pulling things. And then I just start collecting those images, whether it's in a lookbook or whether it's in like shot lists. And I start kind of whittling down to like color palettes, the tone of the images, the depth of the images, and just sort of piecing that together until I find like, oh, this is how I want to speak this story visually. And so like the lookbook, and it's even, the lookbook it's like framing. How do I want to frame this? How do I tell the story within, whether it's, super great close-ups or like the alienation of like these gorgeous wides. It's framing, it's movement, it's color palettes, it's the lenses that you're using. I mean, the one thing that I think I didn't go to film school, so I was a little bit behind the curve with some of my other film peers in Texas. So I couldn't speak the language of like, oh, I'm going to use like a 40 millimeter lens for this close up, or I'm going to use this for that. So I didn't know my tools necessarily early on, which is why my first feature looks, the way it looks, because I didn't know how to express,
right,
this is what I want to achieve. And actually I know this is how I can achieve it. So when I started working in television, all of a sudden I have all of these new lenses and like grip packages and things. It was the first time I'd use a crane, because who can afford a crane on an indie budget? And so I started being a student. One of my things is always be a student, like always be learning. So I would have my ACs on Queen Sugar, like grill me on, okay, what lens am I using and how can I achieve? Or little things that they would do. I'd be like, how do you do that? Like, what is sort of the formula to achieve that visual piece that you're doing? So, and even like, grip and, grip packages, like, what is that? Oh, that's a slider. Okay. Oh, okay. That's how I can achieve that tiny little push in. I'm going to have a dolly here and then push in here. And with television, you're working so fast that if you have an idea, you don't have time to adjust. It's like you either get it or you don't. So learning those tools, it's like, oh, no, I want a dolly for a 4-foot dolly here, and I want a slider to go here so I can do this and this. So that's the beauty of television, is that has been a huge film school for me to learn how to better communicate the vision of what I want. But I think knowing your tools is it's everything. And early on, I didn't know them, but I would try my best way to communicate what my intention was. And I failed a lot too.
It sounds like you approached it though with a lot of humility, right? Like you were on the set, but you were asking questions as opposed to like, trying to pretend like you knew everything?
Oh Lord, no. I would not. I mean, it kind of goes back to in college where it's like, you want to be a script supervisor? Like, I don't know what that means, but I'll show up and I'll figure it out,
Right.
which is, going back to television, like going from a director, then I went to a producing director on Queen Sugar. And when Ava asked, I was like, I don't know. I don't know what that entails or what that means, but I'll figure it out and I'll do my best. And then same with show running. When she asked me to show run, I'm like, I've never been in a writer's room, you realize, but I will figure it out. But I am a writer, so that's
Right.
half the battle.
Right.
So yeah, I'm always a student, always. And hopefully, in our careers and in our art or whatever it is that we love to do, we're always growing and developing and learning and taking risks and trying things and failing miserably and then getting back up and like actually using that thing that we learned from that failure and like making something really killer the next go around. I don't know. I don't ever claim to know everything or even half of it sometimes.
I love that. I want to ask a question because there's actually a lot of actors here as well.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask a question about casting. That is when you're on the other side of the table. I remember I started as an actor also, and I remember the first time I was a producer and I was sitting on the other side of the table. And you know what? My big aha moment was when we cast Raul Castillo in the first play that I ever produced. It was the very first thing I ever produced. We rented 2 weeks at the New School for Drama Theater. We did a new rewrite of Jose Rivera's references to Salvador Dali make me hot. And I remember being in that room and casting for this role that was going to carry so much weight. And when an actor comes into the room and you're like, oh, wow, right?
Yeah.
However, the more telling thing for me was how much every single actor who walked in the room, I was like, please be great.
Yes.
I want you to be great. I'm so excited for you to be great. So can you talk to me a little bit about and especially in the virtual environment where maybe you're casting now entirely through video submissions, what are some of your kind of hallmarks, and also has anything changed now?
No, I mean, the video submissions thing is still the same. I think what I learned with television is that it's such a fast process. You're you have to cast someone for in 2 days, and they have to be costume fitted tomorrow to be on set the next day. So there's such it's such a fast process to it that you don't have the time to luxuriate and I really love this. Let's have a call back and do this. It's you kind of have to see it in the moment that they can do that thing that you need in 2 days. And that's not to say that the performances aren't, equally amazing. It just might be oh, this is actually what matches that character better. This is a great performance, but it doesn't fit with this particular character in this particular moment. So that's the hard thing, is that you see a lot of really great talent that just doesn't fit in that thing for this moment. But I do the thing I do love about it is that I will notate certain actors that didn't get the part for this thing, but then I know I'm going to call them for something else in the future, which has certainly happened time and time again. Even actors that for some TV shows that I've seen that literally the other day, it was I was talking to a friend, I was like, you gotta check out this one actor. They didn't get this thing, but they are amazing. But casting, I love the process that we did with Hellion was very much through the Tree of Life process, where we went to these small towns in Texas and we found these raw kids that had never performed before, never, maybe even seen a camera sometimes. And so much of that was just getting them really comfortable, and also they kind of fit their characters as well. But it was a process that we spent months, literally months, going to Texas towns and digging and digging and digging through hundreds and hundreds of kids to find those gems. And again, some of the kids that didn't make the cut, I've kept in my brain for other things. But I love actors so much, and they're all so wildly different from one to the next. And I think it's so fun to be on set and figure out like, oh, you like to rehearse, you don't like to rehearse. You're really good in take one, but you're really great in take three.
Yeah.
And so it's a fun process with them, and just all the little tools you have to get really great performances. But also I'm editing right now on the pilot, and I love editing. I mean, I think that's sort of the unsung hero, phase of what we do. And that you can change so much, whether it's a scene or performance or even part of the story. You can shift something so dramatically in the edit room. And I'm totally in love with that process. I mean, A, I'm in it right now, but B, like some of the things that we've done, I'm like, oh man, you can see something just go full force, like badassness from something that was like, it was okay at the beginning. And now you're like, hell yeah, that's like amazing.
I also love the editing process. And sometimes those moments that you're like, oh, but if we just cut it right there, it has all new meaning. Like that stuff is it's so magical to think about, like how many different phases from like traveling all these cities to find the right kids, then everything that happens on set, then everything that happens afterwards. And then the sound designer comes in and is like, but if you put this in the background, people's imaginations are going to like insert a whole bunch of stuff for you. I remember the first time I was in a sound design room and I was like, it's witchcraft. It's actual witchcraft.
We were so lucky to like one of the San Francisco Film Society with Hellion gave us a grant to go do our sound at Skywalker, which was like the Disneyland of filmmaking experience. But the level of storytelling that they do is extraordinary. I mean, you're right. There's just and that's the beauty of what we do is there's hundreds of people's names at the end of credits.
Yeah.
And they are all storytellers, regardless of like what department they're in or what, pay grade or any of that. It's like we are all telling a story. And I think that's, as directors, producers, you have to like get everyone on board and everyone excited and have ownership over their art and their hearts and what they're putting on screen. And that, yeah, I love what we do. I love what we do so much.
It really comes through. It's so lovely. I also just have to laugh because Heather Halstead said, I do sound design, can confirm witchcraft. I really appreciate. You guys are going so fast. I had a question and it was about, so Tim Nolan is asking, are there so you've done drama and science fiction. And I would be curious, what are the other genres you're interested in? What else would you want to tackle?
Yeah,
she's like a 30-minute comedy.
I mean, it would be fun. I've not been asked to do that yet. I have definitely gotten stuck in the 1 hour drama, which I love. That's where my heart is and that's where I thrive. But I'm also a horror genre person. So I really do love, I've a couple of horror features that trying to get made. But I do love that space. I mean, good, like, good horror. The horror to me that I love is just that grounded, like the original Dark Waters or Tale of Two Sisters, that kind of just really family drama in a horror package is what I love. So that's something I would, and then I do have like going back to Love Bug. Yeah. I wrote a play in college that then I turned into a feature. And at one point it was going to get made and then it didn't. But it's a big, broad family comedy that has like, very poppy colors and kind of very Sonnenfeld type camera work. And that's another dream project of mine.
I love that. Okay. Can you just tell us like, who's your dream cast for it?
I actually, I can't say because I'm actually out to someone. I mean, who knows? I mean, again, like that's kind of going back to the top of the conversation where you have these projects that you love so much and they'll live literally for decades.
Yeah.
That's one that's lived for literally decades.
I'll just be like poring over Deadline I'll just like Google, get a news brief for your name, like Kat Candler comedy, and I'll just wait.
Nice.
True. I love it. I love also that kind of exciting part of our business that's like, I can't jinx it, which I really appreciate. I feel that a lot. Uh, One of the things that you mentioned earlier was like, yes, writer director, like producing, like not your favorite skill set. However, you have a shit ton of producing credits, and I'm curious about like, what is the piece of that skill set that you felt like you had to add when that title got put in front of you?
It's interesting because television really is what brought out the producing side. And when I transitioned from director to in the writer's room, I now had the skill set of, okay, I know how much time we have on set. I know how many locations we can realistically go to. I know how many scenes we can shoot in a day. I just had all of this production experience that then came into the writer's room / producing space as well, that has benefited me over like since then as I work on other episodic or even the pilot. Like I know I can speak to like schedules, I can speak to budgets, I can speak to all of that stuff in an educated manner now that I may not have been able to prior to. But I think the part of producing that I've found in the last year or two that I really love is more the packaging side of things, and like finding, whether it's my own stuff, like finding like writing partners or even directing partners that I can then kind of put the pieces together at this point and get the thing ready to go out into the world.
Yeah.
And I do love that part of like, whether it's finding the book or finding the play or finding the something that you can then, and also too, like kind of going back to working with friends, like knowing the people who are so wildly talented who have not had that opportunity yet, and bringing those people on to projects that you can then use a little bit of your leverage to help push and like grow other filmmakers and grow other artists. So that I really, really love.
I think packaging is the most fun job for exactly the reason that you just said. It's matchmaking, it's creative matchmaking, and it's so exciting when you match people who then really like make something cool.
Yeah.
It's really, but obviously that as a skill for your own work is incredibly powerful, because what a level up for your own work. Kind of a superpower all of a sudden.
What'd you say? Superpower?
It becomes a superpower all of a sudden. Like if you get really good at packaging and you can apply that to your own work.
Yeah.
That's an incredible superpower.
Yeah. Yes.
So something that I've noticed, this is completely surprised me, but a lot of what's happened in the chat is people are connecting either on Instagram, makes sense to me, or LinkedIn. People are like hella connecting on LinkedIn. And I'm like, LinkedIn is being the unsung hero of networking right now, which I think is kind of incredible. You talked a lot about keeping actors in mind, keeping in contact with creators that you were in different labs with. Do you have a method for that? Are you like a naturally social and gregarious person? Are you organized? How do you actually keep these, all these potential people from your packages together?
It's so funny because back in the day when in Austin, I used to have these particularly I had like women gatherings like before, like this is like decades ago, where I would just grab a bunch of like random friends who are in filmmaking in one way or another and just be like, let's all show up at the Driscoll on Wednesday night at 7:00. I mean, again, this was before like all of these like programs and stuff. And I just always love that. I love like finding people who should be friends, but they just don't know each other yet. And when it comes to community, like, I mean, for example, I have a group of director friends that, for the last couple of months, we would just hang out every Saturday night and like swap experiences and cheer each other up or like, encourage each other. So I don't know. And I don't know. I just love my friends and I love people and I love to hang out when I can and just be present and not even, I think why I lived in Texas for so long is there's such a beautiful balance of life there. Like I've only lived in LA for 3 years now, and I'm a little anxious to get back to Texas when things have, settled down a little bit in the world. But because there's a balance. Like here in LA, I feel like you're inundated constantly with the business, whether it's like billboards or, bus stops. You're just always seeing it. What?
Can I share a fun fact I learned?
Yes.
You might already know this, but I don't think most people know this. So distribution companies will place billboards for for whatever they're meant to be marketing near the homes and offices of the talent in the film or the producers or the directors, to give the impression that they're spending all this money on marketing. But if you go outside of Los Angeles and New York, there are no film billboards anywhere. So just for those in the major markets where you see and you think film billboards exist everywhere, they effing don't. And it's a whole grift game that the distribution business has played for a long time. So like I could never figure out why I was always seeing Array and Blumhouse billboards everywhere. I was living in Echo Park, and then I had a chance to visit the Array offices, and I had a chance to visit the Blumhouse offices, and I was like, oh, got it. Got it. Y'all, we're neighbors. That's why. So it's such a fascinating, cheap and dirty trick that I didn't know about. Sorry. No. And the whole point is they're like, no, Kat, look at your work. I'm marketing your work.
I miss that balance of like, having conversations that aren't film related, seeing like family all the time. There is something that I think in our lives that we just have to learn to turn that part of our brain off at one point and live our lives, and not necessarily. And I trust me, my husband will tell you that I have a hard time not working all the time.
My husband doesn't know anything about
that. It's hard, but it's true. I mean, we need to find balance and not be inundated all the time. And that's why I miss Texas.
I'd be happy to send you a couple of toddlers to pull your attention away from writing. Because that's an enforced balance.
I would totally take that.
Great. They're not very polite, but you can have them. You can't. They like lollipops and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Me too.
Great.
We're a match made in heaven. I love it.
Amazing. They'll be on the next plane to Los Angeles.
Wait.
They'll have face shields. I'm going to tell my husband. He'll be so excited. No, pandemic parenting. It's the dream everybody always looked forward to, right? Kat, this has been absolutely amazing. We've covered so much, and you're so generous and kind, and I feel like it's so heartening to know that you can succeed in our industry. It makes me feel like it's not the cesspool that we know it can be. But it's just been, it's so gratifying also to hear that that endless curiosity seems to be very and curiosity and community building. This is what I took away. And
I love that.
But it feels to me like you have a natural affinity for community building that is I just like to get my people together. But getting my people together is so much more than just getting people together. I started a group in LA in 2014 that grew into a resource list of now 5,000 women nationwide. And it was because I was just getting my people together, right? And that always grows into more than what you think it is. And so one of the big takeaways for me is being intentional about building and maintaining community, fostering each other's curiosity and creativity. It blows my mind that you would on your off day from set, go get into another director's room or another sort of unofficial writer's room. That says so much about your love for this work. So this has just been great. Do you have any parting thoughts or parting words for this crowd? They have really enjoyed this.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I mean, I have a few parting words, which is, you know, like always stay on the playground. I think to your point of like endless curiosity, it's like there are going to be really great things that happen in your life and that happen with your career, but really at the heart of it, it's about doing what you love, enjoying the process, finding the joy, and just like, you know, creating a prop or like working with an actor on set. There's just, if you're in that moment and you're in that space of just genuine joy for what you do, great things will come. But you have to like be on that, like just always stay on the playground, stay on that playground. And then, God, always be learning, always be a student. And at the end of the day, just be a good human. You just want to like hang out on that playground with good humans.
That's right. You know? Right. It's actually really important to remember like what that playground experience was and what it was like to play well with others and the people that you were really excited to play with and the people you were afraid of and how they made you feel, you know, and you think about if it's sort of it's all of our responsibility to maintain the safety of that playground. So I think this is, it's a really important reminder about why not to be an asshole in case you need that. Just in case you need the reminder. As always, everyone, these are presented completely for free, but we will drop a pay what you can link in the chat. And this is sort of about paying it forward. If you have any resources to contribute in terms of dollars, that's great. If all you had today was like the time for yourself to participate in this and learn some things and meet some people, that's actually good enough for us also. But we will have a bunch of events upcoming. There's a lunch and learn on women in cinematography. We have an Art of the Pitch workshop next week, distribution down low in early December, and crowdfunding to build independence, which continues to help drive the highest crowdfunding campaign success rate in the world on Seed&Spark. Kat, thank you 1 million bazillion.
Oh my God, thank you. Like, I love this stuff. I love hanging out. And then I love, like, now that you've pointed me to all of this great networking and community building over here, I'm like, oh, it's so rad.
Yeah, so and as I promised, I'm just slowly disappearing into the dark.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. You have been amazing for one another. This has been so gratifying, and we will see you next time.
Yay.
Take care.